Hello, welcome to my tutorial series, Object-Oriented Programming for Mobile Website Development. So the next function I want to implement here is called getArraySize. Okay, and I'll pass on one parameter for to that function called URL. And you need a parameter if the variable we are using to implement your function is not defined or known at the point of implementation. So when you call this method, you supply that value, your code will run the same way. Okay, so now what we want to do here is to create an object of a new class, object of a class. So we go assign it to this controller object. That becomes your instance of the class. And the class name we want to create instance of, we are not using names here, and we are not using values. We are using keys. Array stores key value pairs. So all we're interested at this stage is the key. The key this variable will represent. It holds a value, and that value will be equivalent to what the user will click when they visit a website. And whatever string that appears at index position 0 is what you are creating instance of, and that should be a class name. And because it's a link, you must have that controller in place before you can assign a link that will pull up the resources when user clicks it. And go ahead now and use this to load model function. Remember when we did the load model function from the main controller class. See? So this is an object of object-oriented programming now, aspect of inheritance taking place. Because every controller we have in our controllers folder extends controller, which is the main controller, right? You can use instance of those page controllers to pull up or call a method implemented in the main controller class. Well, that's what we are doing here, and this one of those methods is the load model function. Otherwise, if a controller has got a model to load, it will be available. So when you call this method, all this method will do is to return instance of the model object for you to use to call the method in that class. And when you create instance of a class, any code implemented at the constructor will run or be executed automatically. And in this instance, this will make the view object available because the main controller class implements a constructor that returns the object of the view class. So effectively calling these two methods here is an invocation of the two methods implemented in the main controller class, and whose job it is to return the objects required to call method from the view class and method from the model class to the respective page controllers that inherited from it. Okay, so having established that, we can now create a variable that will hold the count value. Like you can start a variable name with an underscore, but not a number. And count is a PHP keyword which you use to account array value. And this variable will come when you supply that parameter. And before the parameter that will be adequate in this occasion will be in form of an array. And that parameter will be coming from here. Create URL array. This function converts that into array, and then you can use it in you can extract the keys from the array to create your objects, and then use the objects to call your methods. And you need a count value to be able to do that. So now this is what we're going to do next. Now we've got the count value, we can issue an if statement if block. The way I do it, I first of all establish my if block, put my condition, then anything can go between the if block. The condition I want to match is if size is greater than 0. See, at this stage, you can limit the amount of strings you want in your URL bar, because it's you designing it anyway. You know how many links you have and what your controllers, how many, if your controllers have parameters or not. If they don't, then you can just limit that to like 3. So you can say less than 3. That means you only want to accept only 3 strings in your URL bar. But I'll leave that, comment that out just now. I'll give you an example with up to 7 parameters. So you can see, you can visualize what we are dealing with here. Okay, so we say if that count is greater than 0, now is the time to make that all-important decision. Put your curly bracket right there, and the case you want to switch is the variable count that holds the count value, which is this here. Okay, so you are switching that case. Now the way you do that, you go case space number colon. You start with your highest number and work your way down. Colon, and then you break it right there. End of your statement. So you can copy the same thing and paste it below. Paste it below all the way to the amount of cases you want to compare. So first you start from case 7, followed by case 6, and then 5. You got your 4, case 3, and case 2. And you got your case 2. There's no point doing case 1. We can replace that case 1 with a default. End of your statement. Between that case and the break is where your code goes for each case. Okay, so you can pull it down to see what you're doing, right? Between there goes your code. And once you match all your cases, then the default, what you want to do at the default is simply to load the default page. Because you've already got a controller object, a class object called controller, you can now use that to load your default page. Get default page method. End of your statement right there. So see what we are doing now. We've got our first case when the case is 2, or when the count is 2. That means there's a controller and a method in the controller. But when the case is 1, that's only controller. So there cannot be a case 0 or less than 1. So that won't come into effect. Simply, if there's no method, load the default page of that controller. Okay? And now, so here comes the logic. So first we start from case 7. Now when the count is 7, that means we have 7 minus 2. So the first is your controller, the second is the method, then that means you have 5 parameters in that method. And it's you defining your method for your controller, so you know if your controllers are up to 5 parameters or not. And you might, so I will give you an example how to extract all those parameters from the method, and then when you're designing your application, I will use this limit that number to 3, or limit all the parameters in my controllers functions to 2 maximum. Therefore, I can use count less than 4 to put a limit to the number of strings that will be accepted at the address bar. All right, so you got case 7 here, and what you want to do here Now this is the time to do that parent check. First and foremost, you check if the class exists, and it takes one variable. So the class name you check in, if it exists, always occupy that position 0. And you also want to check that the method exists as well. Although you could get away by just checking that the method exists, because there will be no class without method. There will be no method without class. So when you're doing a method exists, you are equally checking that a class exists. But it will not harm if you repeat that code there, because it's just the logic. They are all different functions anyway. This one takes 1 parameter, this one takes 2. Okay, and you don't need to assign it to any variable. You're only just checking if it does exist. And because this class exists, it is returning a class object, you can replace this one class name with that. So this is effectively the same thing. This variable here is a prevailing variable, and that's what you are assigning to the class name, and you're using a class name and a class method to check if that method exists or not. And because this method, class check and method check, right? All those two methods throw exceptions. So when you call this method, you have to wrap it up in a try-catch clause. Okay, so when I call this method, I will wrap it up in a try-catch clause. You got your controller object. What's left now is to call method. Okay, you've checked that your class exists and it has method in it. Then what? You call your method. You call your method by using this notation: dash, greater than sign, curly brackets, and bracket, end of statement. See, inside that curly bracket goes the method string. So the key that holds that method name goes right there, which is a 1. Everything else will be comma separated. Your parameter starts from 2 to 5. So when the case is 7, that's why you got 5 parameters. Really, that's all you do. And to do other cases now will be just easier. Simply cut and paste now. Because case 6 will be same like 7 minus 1. So you just take that 5 out from there. That's you done case 6. And likewise, you copy that case 6 to do your case 5. You see what we are doing? Between the case and the break, that's where your code goes for each. This is like a nested if statement. If the count is equal 5, do that. And because it's a case 5, that means there will be only 3 parameters. So it will be 0. No, there will be 4 parameters actually. This case 7 will be a 6. Start from 0 to count. That will be 5 parameters. And it's a -1. Case -1 will tell you how many parameters you need. So that will go a 5 there, and that will be a 6 there. Now this one will be a 4. That's a 4 there, all in the brackets. Okay. For your case 4, you simply do the same thing, and then just -1. For your case 3, it will be the same thing. Case 4 -1, that will be a 2. So 3 strings will be 0, 1, and 2. And your case 2 effectively will be the same. So all you have to remember here, this curly bracket is important to leave it in place, because if you're calling a method in a situation where you want to replace the method name with a variable, you must wrap that variable in a curly bracket. And if the method has got parameters, you supply that enclosed in a bracket, and they could be comma separated. Okay, and simply in the default case, load the default page. That's this method effectively complete. So the next method we'll do now will be the method we can implement and then test this program, see if there's any error to debug or not. So thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.